Yeah, hi there. These comments are for 3815. I am Michael, your TOEFL instructor here at California State University, San Bernardino. I'm getting ready to read and score your essay, right? So let's take a look at the support points first. So it says the idea of homeschooling may seem like a good idea, but it says at the very end, the idea of homeschools is great, but students will have more negative academic results than positive. So I think the reading is talking about the negative aspects of homeschool. The next paragraph says, homeschool deprives many students of social interaction. Notice how it talks about social interaction in all these paragraphs. Now you put that it gives them the opportunity to learn at their own pace, but that's not the topic of this paragraph. How do we know? It doesn't say anything about learning at their own pace. Line 2 says social interaction, says students interact. They get along with other students. Students who are homeschooled are deprived of much needed social interaction. So here's a key for you. Just because you see the first line, it doesn't automatically mean that that's the topic sentence. You need to keep reading and look in the whole paragraph to see what the topic sentence is. The next idea says the concept or success of homeschool is introduced and managed by irresponsible parents. It continues to talk about this idea. Okay, the last one, homeschool prevents students from being punctual and responsible. Unlike homeschools, some high schools begin it said they're not learning how to be punctual and responsible, right? Now, then the lecture disagrees with this. The second paragraph, it says, social skills are not that important here. The next paragraph says, there's minimal cases of abuse and irresponsible parenting, but that should not dictate the purpose of homeschool. Here it says homeschool allows students to become self-reliant and independent. So I think these are some of the key points here, correct? Okay, now we need to take a look at what you have. Now, the problem here, it's hard, if you look at what you wrote here, if we go back to review, it's hard when you're only writing 186 words to really show what the relationship is between these, between the reading and the listening passage, right? This one is about 390 words, almost double what you wrote. Remember that I didn't give you 20 minutes to write this. I gave you 60, even 70 minutes, right? So because I'm giving you more time, I expect more development on this. And remember, this type of task, you don't have to create any content. You don't have to, it's not like that test that you took in Nick's class, the personal experience thing where you have to create your own ideas. You don't have to do that. The ideas are already here. You simply need to pull them from the reading and the listening, right? So you say the reading says homeschooling is a good idea for students, but they will have more negative academic results. On the other hand, the speaker gives us a positive side of a homeschool, more systematic. Okay, so I think that's okay. Let's take a look at your next paragraph here. So you say, first, according to the reading passage, homeschooling may give chance for students to learn at their own pace. That's not right. It says here, if you look at the model, the author in the reading passage claims that homeschool students will not get the much needed social interaction because they will not be able to interact with other students like they do in traditional classrooms, right? This is what you need to say. So you missed the most important point, I think, from the reading passage, at least the first point, you did not understand it. Why did you do that? You just took the first line of that paragraph and you put it into this essay. Notice also what you wrote here. It says homeschooling may give chance for students to learn at their own pace. Let's look at what it says here. It says homeschools may give the opportunity for students to learn at their own pace. You can't do that. I mean, you shouldn't have done it in the first place because that's not the main point. But even if it were, you're copying exactly the sentences from the reading passage, and that's not showing that you have writing, that you know how to write. That just shows that you can copy. The purpose here is to try to integrate ideas. You say, in contrast, speaker argues that homeschooling may give students free time to listen to their assignment and ask the teacher questions. In this one, it says, in contrast, this speaker downplaying the importance of social interaction claims that many do not require social skills, that shy students are offered a more comfortable and safer environment in homeschools, and that homeschool students indeed get chances to mingle socially when they participate in clubs and sports. Right? So what you wrote, it's not really similar to anything of what's going on there. So you're missing, I think, the most important points from the reading passage. Okay, let's go to the next one. You say, second, homeschooling, the author argues, is introduced and managed by irresponsible parents. Right? So let's look at this. Now let's go back and see what it says here. The concept of homeschool is introduced and managed by irresponsible parents. You can't do that. You're copying exactly the same sentences from the reading passage. You know what happens on the TOEFL when you do that? You get a 0. You get no score. This is called plagiarism, right? So you definitely do not want to do that. You say, conversely, homeschooling can be moving from the negative to the positive side, as the speaker says, likewise, different treatment for students in the social science. So let's look at what the model says. On the other hand, speaker asserts that the frequency of irresponsible parents is minimal. Furthermore, the speaker claims that even though parents may not have the necessary education and qualifications, these students have access to credentialed teachers who will guide and teach their students through computer software and networks. Right? I think that's kind of what you want to say, but when you look at this, you're not saying that. You're not saying enough. You talked about social science, correct? But if you go into the passage, if you go into the lecture, there's nothing in here about social science. So I don't know where you got that from, but it's not in the lecture. So you have a lot of inaccuracies. And when you are explaining information from the reading, you're taking exactly the same sentences from the reading passage. So you got to step it up, buddy. You can't do this. Because at the graduate level, your professors are going to expel, or they will kick you out of the programs. What's going to happen? They're not going to let it go. They don't allow plagiarism at the graduate level. And guess what? That's one of the biggest problems that they have with international students. So at this point, what this is telling me is your English skills are so weak, you don't know how to re-explain other people's ideas. Therefore, you have to take exactly the sentences that they've written and then paste them into your essay. But that's telling me why, whatever the reason is telling me that you're not ready for a graduate level writing. That's what this is telling me. Okay, let's take a look at your next paragraph. Third, the author believes that homeschooling prevents students from being punctual and responsible. Right? Now, what does it say here? Let's go back. Let's look at this sentence here. So if I'm going to just look at the sentence from the reading passage, okay, let's compare. Homeschool parents, homeschooling. Prevent, students, from, being, punctual, responsible. You're taking exactly the same grammar from the reading passage. Exactly. You're taking the vocabulary and the grammar, so that is considered plagiarism. So every time you've written about the reading passage, you did not use your own grammar, you did not use your own vocabulary. So you say, on the other hand, homeschooling can allow students to become self-learning and independent. For example, struggling in math, science, and history lessons that can help students' future success. Also, students can give, that's not grammatically, let's look at what the writer wrote over here. Conversely, students can still learn to become responsible, the speaker explained, since they are still in charge of understanding the science and history lessons they study. In addition, these self-starter students who are homeschooled will develop independence, an important trait that will help them in their future academic studies. Okay, let's take a look at, I'm looking at the rubrics right now, so you're not going to get a 5, no 4, no 3. 2, it says that your response demonstrates a misunderstanding or you have completely omitted the overall connection between the lecture and the reading passage. I think in that second paragraph, you definitely got confused on what the main point was of the reading passage as opposed to the lecture. And also the fact that you're taking exactly the same sentences from the reading passage without rewriting them is telling me that you don't have what's called the language or the vocabulary to rewrite those things. Okay, so I don't know. I'm going to put your score here, and it could be developed a lot more. I would double whatever you wrote times 2, especially for graduate writing. I'm going to put you at 2.5 out of 4, 17 points out of 30 on this practice test. 2.5 out of 5, I guess. So 17 points on that. Okay, so 2.5 is going to put you at 70% on this project. The question is now, what can you do, if anything, to improve your writing skills, right? That's kind of the question that we have right now. So here, I'm going to give you some suggestions. So look at step 1 here. I think there are some things that you can do. The good news is you can improve. I think that your language use, your vocabulary, and your grammar. The bad news is you might not be able to do it in 10 weeks. That means you may have to repeat this course at least one more time. If you're not ready, you're not ready. So you definitely don't want to go into the graduate program if you're not ready. But here's your goal. You want to master all the vocabulary words in lesson 3. And then you want to study lesson 4 and you want to learn those vocabulary words. And then you want to go to lesson 5, make sure you learn those words, and then lesson 6. So I have specific instructions on each of these lessons of what you can do to put these words into your long-term memory. So what'll happen, if you improve your vocabulary, you won't have to copy sentences exactly. You'll have the vocabulary to rewrite these sentences using your own vocabulary. The next thing is because you're plagiarizing and you also had some grammar issues in there, I think studying in the grammar part of my course, you're already doing that, right? So you took the pretest. What you want to do now is to focus on those lessons to help strengthen your grammar knowledge. And what does it mean? As you go through the lessons, you should be writing down the sentences on paper, practicing them, and so on. Okay, so the other thing is listening. I think lesson number 1 is a good lesson on note-taking, and it looks like you're having trouble, I think, keeping track of the main points in lectures. So you can also practice by going through some of my listening practice tests. You can go through the practice test, listen to it, take down some notes, and then practice the comprehension quizzes until you're scoring around 80% on each quiz. Once you can listen to the lecture and take the practice test and get 80 or higher the first time, that's telling you that you are now pretty good with your listening skills. I think also reading is important for you right now. Again, reading lesson number 1, go through that lesson. The key is to make sure that you can take notes using your own vocabulary and your own grammar. You can take notes on reading passages. You're comfortable doing that, right? The next thing you can do is you can start going through some of these reading practice tests to work on improving your reading speed, because I'm guessing your reading speed is probably really slow, which means it's taking you a lot of time to go through the reading passage, and then the lecture, you're probably having to listen to it many, many times, and then you're not having enough time to actually write the essay, so you're not able to develop your responses a little bit as much as you need to. So if you can improve your listening comprehension and also your reading comprehension, I think you will do better on this integrated writing, this type of integrated writing task. Okay. Right now, let's go into the writing area. I'm going to show you some things that I think might help you here. So let's see. I think making sure you go through writing lesson number 9, I think is good. How about lesson 10, scoring higher than 28 out of 30? Remember, you scored 17. Lesson 11, I think, is good. Lesson 12, quoting, paraphrasing, and summarizing during the integrated writing task. You can check that out. And I think that would be some good things too. So if you go through these lessons, if you master, I think what I'm teaching you in these lessons, I think you'll do much better on the final exam, the integrated final exam. However, if you don't do very well on the integrated final exam, I don't know. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to make it in this class. Remember that your problems in the graduate program will be magnified by 100, right? So if you're having problems in my course, you'll have 100 times more problems in your graduate courses. So you really need to get control, I think, of your writing right now if you want to score, if you want to do well in your graduate program, right? And I think you've done some summaries in my critical thinking. You've also had some slight difficulties re-explaining other people's ideas. Okay.